Think about a modern metropolis. Traffic lights coordinate thousands of cars, supply chains deliver tons of food, and millions of pedestrians navigate crowded intersections. We move through this massive, complex infrastructure by reflex, relying on our physical vision to keep the systems operating. Then, the system hits a fatal glitch. A man waiting in his car at a traffic light goes completely, spontaneously blind. The contagion presents a strange medical symptom. Victims don't experience a descent into darkness. Instead, they are swallowed by an overwhelming, glaring, milky white void. As the condition spreads through the city, the loss of sight is only the first step. The question then becomes, if the physical eyes fail, what happens to the invisible structures that keep a city standing? In Saramago's city, the white blindness is a catalyst. It triggers a rapid chain reaction, where fear and selfishness override the city's basic functions. The Portuguese author José Saramago uses this scenario to test the limits of human nature, starting with the state. Faced with an unexplained contagion, government officials panic. They abandon empathetic medical responses and move straight toward brutal pragmatism. Their solution is to forcibly remove the infected from the public eye, locking them inside an abandoned, decaying asylum to contain the problem. The state enforces this quarantine with lethal efficiency. Heavily armed guards surround the perimeter, ordered to shoot any internee who steps out of line. When the government turns its military force against its most vulnerable citizens, the social contract breaks. This is the first major pillar of civilization to fall. Once external laws are stripped away, the people inside the asylum must fend for themselves. Without authority, basic interpersonal morality quickly follows. This node map illustrates the flow of resources in a closed system. As starvation sets in, a hostile faction of blind men dominates the asylum, severing the supply lines and centralizing all the food under their own control. They leverage this scarcity to extort the other internees, demanding sexual violence against the women in the asylum in exchange for survival. The group's moral anchor is a doctor's wife, the only sighted person in the city, faking blindness to stay with her husband. Eventually, she reaches a breaking point, murders the gang leader, and sparks a fire that destroys the asylum. In a vacuum of authority, a lack of resources can strip away human empathy. The micro-society collapses from within, forcing a desperate, violent breakout. The survivors escape the asylum, only to find the metropolis has descended into filth and anarchy. Saramago reinforces this collapse through his literary style. This standard text block represents traditional structure. He removes page boundaries by eliminating paragraph breaks, leaving an unbroken wall of text. Punctuation then dissolves, creating a stream of consciousness flow, mirroring the blind citizen's claustrophobia. By removing the traditional laws of grammar, Saramago forces the reader to experience a world without structural rules. The group wanders through the ruins for days, until the epidemic suddenly ends. The first blind man inexplicably regains his sight in the street. Vision returns, but the survivors are changed. They have to live with the memory of the savagery they resorted to while in the darkness. Saramago used his writing to examine how we interact when our tools for understanding fail. In his view, the white blindness is a metaphor for human ignorance. The book highlights a collective failure to truly see and value one another, suggesting that we are often blind to our neighbors, even when our eyes are open. The novel ends with a sobering observation. A city's foundation isn't found in concrete or law, but in the fragile, daily choice to maintain empathy for one another.